When we think about, I often think in meditation of, well, we've got to get here. You it's one of those funny things because obviously, where are we? We're here. So it's just a matter of noticing, not of traveling. The journey is something that by the time we thought of, oh, I need to get here, we're here. All we have to do is notice. So I decided to do I'm working on predicament, like we're all enjoying or being subjected to or being tortured by or being enlightened by the predicament koans. And this is the last week, and next week I'll go into the next category of koans, mystery and impossible tasks and things. But the predicament koans have this great quality of, I don't know, they stop us in some way. And this one is called the fire at the end of the universe, or at the end of the Indian word is Kalpa, the fire at the end, which was the great arc of a universe, where it was, came into being and eventually was destroyed in fire and destruction, just like a galaxy. Usually that's how galaxies go out grandly. So there's some sympathy with our prejudices about physics here. So, I'll just give you the little story. A student asked Da Shui, he was a fairly early teacher, it's clear that the fire at the end of the Kalpa, the fire at the end will completely destroy the universe. I'm still not clear, is there something that won't be destroyed? I think Elizabeth Kubler-Ross used to call this bargaining. It's like, is there something, surely there's something that won't be destroyed, And Da Sui said, destroyed. He was sort of, I don't know, I don't think he was bored with this, but he wanted to cut through. He stripped his language down here and said, it will go along, I will go along with everything else. Go along with everything else, said Da Shui. So he just didn't even, and it's really interesting that it's not a you or a universe, it's the universe is destroyed, you're destroyed, you're destroyed. The universe comes into being, you come into being, all that. And Da Sui, interestingly enough, was, and it's destroyed in fire, was the firekeeper he was studied with a great teacher, Guishan, and he was the firekeeper at the temple, so it was his business to keep. So he knew something about the fire at the end of the universe. He kept the fire. It was one of those jokes, and the poet who collected this koan said, "Caught between destroyed and not destroyed, the student asked their question of light of the fire at the end of the universe." So I guess all our questions are asked in that light, really. Touchingly, it's because of a single phrase, it will be destroyed. They travel back and forth for 10,000 miles alone. And and then the student was kind of great because the student didn't quite accept this and said, wanted a second opinion, which is a great thing, which is something we want, right? And the student then went to another teacher and told the conversation. The other teacher was called Do Zi. And he just told the conversation about it will be destroyed. He said, he didn't say it will be destroyed, even destroyed. And yet the next teacher turned to his altar, lit incense, offered it, bowed, and said, an ancient Buddha has appeared in Sichuan, which is where the guy had just come from. Dasui, an ancient Buddha has returned, has appeared in Sichuan, and he said, you should go back there as quickly as you can and make amends for your mistake. And the guy said, okay. And so he hurried and hurried and hurried that, 1,000 miles or so on foot back to Sichuan. And then he found Dasui had just died. So he turned and went back to Dozi. And when he arrived there, he had just died. So the fire at the end of the universe had consumed everybody. And it's sort of one of those Zen jokes of like, I'm sorry, I just couldn't stay around for you to ask me another question. So, touchingly, it's because of this single phrase, it will be destroyed, he travels back and forth for 10,000 miles alone. So there's an empathy for how the sorrow of trying to, like, in a way, get out of here, get out of this human predicament. So the predicament koans, there are lots and lots of them, but this one is the predicament of, oh my God, what? And we know, in a way it's hard not to hear about the state of the world and not to have that feeling, The world is marvelous and it's full of marvelous things and it's full of life and beauty. In the midst of our fire season, yesterday it just... last night it rained, Some rain came in. It's the first, I think, storms from the great, from the beginning of the whole cooler season, which, if so, will be great for us because we're not going to burn down. Our houses aren't going to burn down, which we have an attachment to our houses not burning down. It's a thing in Northern California. And Central Coast too. I see someone from Central Coast on there laughing as well. Brian. so it's like we are for that. We're for rain. But of course, another friend on here is trying to harvest grapes, and is terrible for harvesting grapes. So maybe we'll get her to tell about that later. But you can see that's life, isn't it? That's how it is. It's like in the midst of everything, there's always a predicament. And so the Zen people kind of understood the predicament thing, and they understood that in a way we suffer because we have a predicament, and then we do crazy stuff. We start rioting or whatever it is. People start rioting or blaming people, or all that kind of thing. Being excruciatingly correct or being excruciatingly incorrect, or all those things, and And we might say that, one of the things I've noticed is that when I wake up in the morning, I don't yet necessarily know who I am and what kind of things I do. And so, I've kind of learned to enjoy that because I haven't yet put on my John costume, and this morning I could see the rain. I opened my eyes and out the window there was the rain. But it's a nice thing, not to know who you are yet, because you're free in a way. And then gradually, then I realize, oh, the rain's come in the night. I remember it raining in the night, and I remember getting up and looking at the rain. So I start remembering gradually. And then we put on our predicament as one of the last things we put on. I'll put on my predicament, and that's where I'll know I'm me, And whatever you're worried about, it might be climate change, it might be democracy, it might be to someone you love who's in trouble, it might be you and your troubles, And there's an empathy in that. That's the body. You can't not, in a sense, be connected to the world. That's the bodhisattva path. Not possible not to be connected, But also, it's possible to take it all too seriously, to take yourself too seriously, really. And part of the bodhisattva path is not taking myself seriously. So it's like... And I learned this when I was really young. My mother had to work, but I lived really close to my school, so I could just get up and walk 100 yards down the hill or 200 yards down the hill. And there was my little grade school. And nothing bad was going to happen to me on the way to school. And so I remember quite a few times getting up, but I forgot to put on John. And I wound up at school in my pajamas. So I'm 6 and I'm in school, and suddenly I realize it's like recess. It's about 10 a.m. I realize, hang on, something's wrong here. I didn't put myself on yet, but it was kind of rather fun, really. So yeah, and one thing about a predicament, there's a couple of questions to ask about a predicament. Most people are concerned. I don't think you can not be concerned when you hear the great, the Thwaites Glacier, which is the largest mass of ice that's sort of moves, shifting around uneasily in its sleep in Antarctica, And, opinions vary on will it raise the water level, 2 feet or 10 feet. And Miami will turn into Venice. so maybe parts of New York even, and New Jersey, so that'd be great. And it's impossible not to think, well, what does that mean? What does it mean for life and planet and the human response to stress? We've now realized that the human response to stress is not rational, reasonable. I think the epidemic was helpful for that, because people are saying there's no epidemic, or it's all lies, or the paranoid response. Let's sacrifice children to the gods, that kind of thing comes on up. So there's a paranoid quality in the human psyche that thinks it's being plotted against if something difficult is happening. So we now know that we'll have to ride out whatever comes, however we do. But it's good to be free yourself. It's good to be free. And so then to look at the predicament, the fire at the end of the universe, say, well, what's it like to know that the universe might end in fire? And really it's the same question as, well, do you think I'm really going to die? Everybody I know who's dead has died, but lots of people I know haven't died. And so maybe there'll be an exception just for me. so maybe I won't die, And it's sort of like the black swan thing. All swans are white, but then when you go to Australia, you find black ones. So maybe you go to somewhere like Australia and people won't die. It's like that. So maybe it's a black swan event. So, and we can tell that the answer, it will be destroyed, is the teachers, it just says destroyed actually. Gone, goes, gone. Is kind of, it's like everything is happening now. Like we worry about death and we can tell if you look into the now, like now would be good. Let's do it now. Let's look into the now. Let's be here. And if you look in, you can see that the vastness of this moment, if I'm not arguing with myself and I'm not filling my mind with whatever I fill it with, my predicaments, then we can examine the moment, we can look around and look around the room. And there's space and calm, and we're always hurrying past the moment, past the now. But when you're in the moment, there's only this vastness. And then there'll be another vastness, but in a way it appears without us doing anything. The world comes to meet us. It just comes through us and flows through us and into us. And we just hear. It's like one of those standing waves you'll get in a river sometimes, those old artists who used to paint with ink on flowing water, do circles, That's us. We're the ink circle, But we're also the water. And so this fire runs through all things. It runs through us too. The fire at the end of the universe is in our veins and our hands, and and the trees, they're looking very happy about rain. And last night I could feel them trees were sort of getting excited, like kids when rain's coming there. And I could hear it was like they were whispering, and their leaves were bending and touching each other, and they were saying, "It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming." And you can just feel the rain and the water vapor in the air. The trees are all, "It's coming, soon." So it was like waiting for a birthday. And so, but that itself is a time, it's coming. That's a here and a now. It's not when it comes. Yeah. And your time of now, everything that's happened to you is all right. It brought you here. Any diagnosis you have, it's all right. You're in the now. Can't do anything about that. But also, if you look at it, it's not that you can't do anything about that. It's that you're in it and it's marvelous, and doing something about it is like pulling out and having standing outside. So that's the main question about predicaments, standing out. They make us try to stand outside of things, but that's just the mind making itself up. And it's better to go to school in your pajamas than do that. So you don't have to it's better not, you don't have to go to school in your pajamas. I soon learned to wake up enough not to do that. but there's something about not, when you wake up, not to put on your predicament. I have this problem because my kid, I have this problem because my partner, I have this problem because me, Well, you can tell that's just people shouting blame on Twitter, It doesn't matter, really. And, so I don't know about predicaments. And one of the other things is what's funny about it. There's something funny about everything. There's something funny about my life, You notice that if you're in a hospice or a cancer ward, there's some people have a tremendous sense of humor about their predicament. And it's all right, it's all right, because here. It's not all right because it doesn't hurt or because any of that stuff, or there's no sorrow or loneliness, but here is the profound thing that we always have and we can never get away from. And I might forget to if I'm here, I might forget, gradually we forget to have certain problems. We forget, and then other problems will be with us. They're sort of like the shape of us in a way, and occasionally I'll still dream about something that was a problem years ago, and I don't notice it's a problem anymore, And and that's all right too. And just the texture of life is to have things that don't make sense, and the taste of things. So.